Today I want to share with you a layout that I made about the place that I live, my apartment building. It's a photo that has absolutely no people in it, just the building. I think it's easy to forget that we can scrapbook those kind of things. So I'm going to use some watercolor paint, and I'm using a kind of watercolor paint that comes in a tube, and it's just very highly pigmented when it comes out of that tube. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a soaking wet brush, and I'm going to go right into that watercolor, and I'm working on some watercolor paper, and I'm just going to be messily slapping it on there. And I do dip my brush into water between colors, but I don't really clean it. I just kind of slap that paint on, and if it mixes, well, that's kind of awesome. That's exactly what I want. I want all those colors to kind of bleed into each other and to just get a good sort of bright colored busy background. My page happens to be about New York City where I live, which is super busy, so it's kind of appropriate, but I think that this background would work for so many different things. And if I want, I can even mess up the colors a little bit more. So for instance, I can load my brush with paint and water, and then I can tap it. And look how those big splats just go flying through that paint. And don't ever worry about mixing your colors. I always say the more colors, the better, but I'm kind of a maximalist that way. So once my entire page is full, I'm going to let that dry. And so let me move this wet one out of the way. And then you're going to have one that looks a little something like this. Then I'm going to take a permanent black marker. And this one happens to have a bullet tip along with a chisel tip. And I want to use the bullet tip for this. I want something that's waterproof because we're going to put another layer of watercolor right over this one. Now I'm drawing some wonky circles. I would encourage you to do any shape that you find really easy and pleasing. For instance, you could do triangles, you could do squares, hearts, four-leaf clovers, and I mean, I guess if you're a really good drawer, you could do ducks and bunnies. Whatever it is that feels good to you. And I'm just going to continue to doodle these circles, not worrying if they're even, if they're the same size, or anything like that. But one tip I'm going to give you is it's good to go off the edge, because that makes it feel a little bit more like it's a pattern instead of a doodle that's contained. Once I've finished with that, I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush, load it with water, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into my paint and boom, look how brightly colored these circles are. I go right over that watercolor. Because even though watercolor is transparent, one of the things about tube watercolors right when they come out is that they're just a little thicker than the traditional pan watercolors. And notice how that pen is not smearing at all. So that's really important to use something that's not going to smear once you add all that water on. So I have one here where I have already finished that step. And now what I'm going to do is it's a little bright and crazy. So I'm going to take some gesso, and gesso is a primer that's chalk based. I'm going to take a room key. You could also use an old credit card, and I'm just going to scrape it across the top. I can go in several directions, and all that I'm doing is just toning down those bright colors just a tiny bit. This is also going to give me a place to put my journaling. After all, journaling is the reason that we scrapbook, so it's important to make sure that it has a place on every layout that you do. So once I have my paint down, again, I'm going to let that dry. And I have one here that's already done. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down to 8.5 by 11. So it fits nicely on a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. And I'm also going to round the corners. I'm going to stitch it down to a black sheet of cardstock, and it's going to look a little something like this. Now, if you don't have a sewing machine, don't worry, you can hand stitch it or you can just glue it. I'll put my photo down, and you can see it's just a photo of the building where I live, and it's an interesting photo, but I want to tell the story because if anybody didn't know me, they wouldn't know what that was. So all I do is I simply add my letter stickers right next to it, and they're so easy. I love the ease of letter stickers. And then I'm just going to use a permanent pen. Let's see, upside down letter stickers honestly are tougher than I thought they'd be. And now I'm just going to take a permanent pen, do a little bit of journaling, and my finished page is going to look a little something like this. It's artsy, it's free, it's fun, and it's a story about where I live. We'll be right back.